What's going on, guys? Danny here from Metal Couch, and we're back with the Bolt Thrower discography review with their third album today, entitled War Master. Now, War Master varies in some ways and also has a lot of similarities to the previous album. First off, with War Master, we have an intro and an outro like the second album, and I think that these intros where there's really nothing going on and serve almost no purpose on this album at all. It's very distracting because once we get right into the first track, Unleashed Upon Mankind, it has this. It's like the intro is such a slow build up and just hits this climax, which to me it would have been easier just to do like a fade in effect right into the actual song, or spend maybe 10 seconds with this intro as opposed to I can't even remember how long it's actually supposed to be. That's how long it is. It's distracting, it's long, and completely unnecessary. But Unleashed definitely establishes what we're going to be dealing with here, and wow, the production on this is a little bit more pristine compared to the previous two albums. Also, the guitars have been tuned up to C sharp as opposed to A. I had to do a little bit of research on that just to find out, just going like, because that last album was tuned down really low, super low for the era, and then finding that C sharp. So now we're getting back into what you would normally find with this type of metal in terms of the guitar tuning. And then we go into What Dwells Within. Now, What Dwells Within to me is, well, first off, it's a highlight track off the album. It's also a culmination of all the elements that you will find on this album. The drumming is superb. The solo work is fantastic. Definitely one of my highlights off the album, and just a super, super awesome track. The Shreds of Sanity kind of takes a page from World Eater from the previous album and keeps a really, really catchy chorus riff that will stay in your head for days. That's something that I've noticed with Bolt Throwers, that they're really, really good at about just every once in a while throwing in a riff or even a drum pattern that could stay in your head for days. Now, Profane Creation slows down the album in favor of chugging guitar riffs, and again has a climax at the end of the song similar to Unleashed. Destructive Infinity is probably the weakest track off of this album. I didn't really enjoy it too much, even though it's not a bad song. It's just kind of there and doesn't serve much compared to some of the stuff that heard previous and some of the stuff that would come afterwards. Final Revelation sideswipes you out of nowhere with a guitar solo less than a minute in. It just comes completely out of nowhere. Didn't expect it, just kind of happens. And then this is one that I had to look at, Cenotaph, because there were a few things about this song that I didn't know while I was listening to this album and found out later. But supposedly Cenotaph is a continuation of World Eater from the previous album, and I noticed that while listening, because this is why I had to look this up, the production on this song is different than the rest of the album, to the point where it's super distracting. Super distracting. It doesn't sound as pristine as the rest of the tracks. It stands out. However, this is a damn good song, and if it's supposed to be a continuation of World Eater, I would say that it is, because that's how good of a track it is. Other than the really, really distracting change in production, I have no qualms with this track. It's awesome, and it's probably the most popular song from this album, and I can hear why. It's an amazing track. Then we get the title track, War Master, which I didn't really find too interesting other than a few solos towards the end. It didn't really hit me like some of the other tracks off the album, especially coming off of Cenotaph. And then Rebirth of Humanity, where riffing guitar riffs are shining on this one, especially towards the end where you get some riffs that have some bending notes, and it's really unique, really unique. And then we close with the 6-minute long track Afterlife, which is a fairly decent closer, probably the best closer that we've heard of the discography yet. I really enjoyed this track. This album clocks in at about a little under 46 minutes, so it's a little bit longer than the previous two albums, and a lot of people from reading on the internet seem to think that this is the last good Bolt Thrower album, and I'm not exactly sure why people would claim that, considering that I think that all of their albums are at least decent, good, if you will, if you want to get super subjective. It's just, this album does have a few problems here and there. The pristine production, compared to the previous one, I would have to say that I actually preferred Realm of Chaos's production to this, but that's not to say that this one's particularly bad. The solo work is better. You can tell that their musicianship has continuously improved over the course of these albums, and almost to the point where if somebody were to just go down the list listening to these albums in chronological order, they're kind of waiting for that plateau. And granted, you might find, some of you may find a plateau, but I think that we can only go up from here with Bolt Thrower. So if I were to give this album a grade, I'm not going to give it as high as I've been doing before, because there are a few tracks here that I didn't really enjoy. If I were to give this album a grade out of 10, I would probably get it an 8.5. I think 8.5 is a very deserving score of something like this. I mean, you've got a few duds here and there, but overall, when this album is great, it is great. When it's boring, it's boring. But then again, to me, that happens on just about any album. It's so hard to find an album that is completely perfect when it comes to blending music together and not using filler. So, an 8.5 out of 10 for me. Danny here from Metal Couch, signing out.